Hi everybody, Richard Tromans here again, Artificial Lawyer TV. Today we're doing another product walkthrough, this time with Definely, a company that you probably know well already. However, they have developed many new things, and to give us an update on what they can do now is Riz. Hey Riz.
Hey Richard, how you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. Glad to have you with us again. Riz did actually the last product walkthrough, that was a while ago. So Riz, I'll let you take it away, I'll come back at the end, but please tell us what Definely can do now.
Sure, perfect. Thank you very much. So what I'll do is sort of kick into a little bit of refresher, very short, around Defining's kind of core productivity suite. And then I'll spend a little bit of time talking through our latest release, which is our Agentic system that sits on top of the entire productivity platform within Microsoft Word. So Defining kicked off about 5 years ago. A lot of people will already be aware of us in the market. We started with our first product, which was our draft product. So really, this is a pain point that we all faced as lawyers. How do I sit within a single clause or provision and understand what that clause is telling me without me ever actually having to navigate away from it? And so you can see with respect to draft, if I want to understand the meaning of something like base reference banks, I'm simply able to double click. It'll bring up the meaning of that term in the side panel. I'll double click again, and I can build this breadcrumb trail of all of the information that I need to understand what's in front of me. What we did then is, instead of following the traditional path of a lot of startups and doubling down on being a niche or point solution, we decided to expand our offering to build out a broader productivity suite within Microsoft Word. So what we did is first build out our proofreading tool. So everyone's aware of proofreading solutions. This really allows me to sanitize a contract before I ship it out either to the senior associate or partner, or indeed to the client or opposing counsel. So how do I pick up issues with my formatting and definitions, undefined terms, broken cross-references, drafting notes, or anything that will be bad for my reputation if they're still in the document at the time that I send it out. More recently, so within the past sort of 6 to 12 months, we launched our precedent search tool. So this is a smart drafting solution that brings the entire knowledge that sits within your DMS to the user within Microsoft Word. So let's say, for example, I was looking for a particular calculation of interest clause. I could simply come here, type calculation of interest, hit the enter button, and Definely is going to go find that needle in the haystack. So that best fit calculation of interest provision from your gold standard precedent bank of information. We'll let you know if something is gold standard. We'll also let you know if something is highly used by your peers amongst the firm to give you confidence that this is a clause that is commonly being used across the business. Users can then simply hit this insert clause button and pull that clause directly from the DMS system into the document that they're working on. We'll update the formatting, and we'll also proactively identify any undefined terms that might be introduced into the clause by virtue of you introducing this particular provision. You can also filter by any metadata which exists within your DMS system. So things like client, contract type, author, any other labels that you might have within your DMS system can equally be applied to the filters within the search. Perfect. So that's a little bit of an overview of the existing productivity stack. So pulling clauses in from my DMS system, inserting them into the contract that I'm working on, then being able to iterate and refine that knowledge by virtue of our draft product, and then finally being able to use proof to ultimately clean and sanitize a contract before sending it out. What Definely has now done is build out our enhanced feature. So this really is the agentic system that sits on top of this entire productivity suite. Our approach has been not to focus on just riding the hype cycle and updating our URL to definely.ai, but really focusing on what do we already do well and what does that look like when combined with all of these emerging technologies. And this is why we think we are really well placed to win with respect to the agentic AI world. The reason is that an agentic system is ultimately just a system that combines the intelligence of your advanced AI models with access to tools in order for the agent to take actions on your behalf and under your control. Now, imperative in that definition is access to tools. If the agent can't access the requisite tools it needs to complete the task on your behalf, all it's going to be doing is just querying a generic LLM to try to do that for you. And so what you're going to get is a system that can't complete complex end-to-end legal workflows. Because we own the adjacent workflows with our Vault, Draft, and Proof products, we can actually simultaneously deploy agents into all of these different products at once in order to ultimately complete the workflow in a way that a lawyer would traditionally go about it. Cool. So what does it actually look like? So to access the enhanced product, I can simply just come here and click on the enhanced button. I immediately get the option to choose our summarization feature. Again, we don't see summarization as a massive differentiator. It's a fairly table stakes offering these days. So it is something that we do offer, but not something that we hang our hat on necessarily as a company in terms of differentiating ourselves. So I click on the virtual assistant. This includes the agentic system. First and foremost, I might just want to ask the system a question. Again, your query and response system is not anything that's completely novel, but there are two things that we do here that are worth showing. So let's say I want to see what are the warranties provided by the borrower to the lender. Please put your answer in table format. The first thing that will happen is, because our draft product understands the syntactic relationships that exist within this agreement, we actually only send those provisions that are required to answer this question into the large language model. So it means that we don't have the same limitations around context windows. Secondly, what you'll see is in the output, we've been able to actually apply the definely draft overlay into the answer from this system. Why this is important is because feedback we've received from customers is often the time that I save by being able to enter the prompt is offset by the time it actually takes me to validate the output once I receive it. So what you'll see now, as soon as I go ahead and receive that response, any clause reference, any definition used with respect to the response itself is going to be highlighted for me in green. And what I'll be able to do is just very simply double click on it and access the meaning of all of those terms that I want to. Just give it a second. Sorry, I'm not sure why it's taking so long now, but it should be able to give me an answer in a short moment, and then you'll see the defining draft overlay. Perfect. So I get the response now, and what you'll see is anything, information that I need to access, such as clause 24, obligor, I can simply double click and I can very quickly validate the accuracy of this answer. So what I can then do is pop it into an email and send it off to the client. Now, again, nothing here is completely groundbreaking. What I'm going to start moving into is our actual agentic system. Before I do that, the first thing just to note is we've built this agentic system on 3 pillars. So first and foremost is transparency. So there's no training taking place here. We don't train on your own data. We don't improve the product based on your proprietary knowledge base. The second is traceability. So we partnered with a framework called Landgraph. Why it is important to use Landgraph for deploying agents is for 2 reasons. So first and foremost, agents have recall. They remember where they've been when providing an answer, which means that if you want to validate or ask any clarifying questions, the agent actually retraces its steps in order to clarify that answer. This is something that agents are actually particularly bad at. So if you didn't have a system like Landgraph, it might go into completely new data to clarify a previous question. And then secondly, we can provide the user with an audit trail. So we'll tell you exactly where the agent went, what information it accessed, what it did with that information in order to provide you with the answer, to really help build that trust with the user that it's following a similar workflow to how they work. Great. And then the third one you'll see in action in a little while. So in the example when I showed you Vault, I searched for a calculation of interest clause. The big assumption there was that I actually knew as the user that I was looking for a calculation of interest clause. So let's say, for example, I want to understand if there are any clauses missing in this agreement that we would typically expect to see. So I say, based on LMAs in our Vault, are there any clauses missing in this agreement that we would typically expect to see? And so a few things are happening here. First and foremost, you will see the explainability piece start to come through in how our agent works. So it takes the user on the journey of what it's doing in real time. So by the time that you actually get the output, you're comfortable that it's followed a similar workflow to how you would follow it. The second is how this agent is using all of our different products to be able to come up with an answer. So the draft product means that it can take these 233 pages, break it down into the 500 component clauses. It's then able to go into the Vault system, use our semantic search technology to find similar agreements that exist within your own DMS system, break them down into their constituent clauses, and then ultimately perform a gap analysis in ultimately less than a minute. And what it's told me here is that based on typical contracts that we would be using in this type of agreement, there's a calculation of interest clause which appears to be missing. It's also prompting me on the next step. So it's telling me, would you like me to retrieve the standard calculation of interest clause from the vault so that you can review or include it? So I can say yes. Please retrieve the clause. And now what I could also do is if I wanted to apply any filters that I would typically use in a DMS search, I can actually apply these using natural language queries. So I could say, yes, please retrieve the clause, apply only gold standard clauses and only with respect to X client, because we know X client is very particular around how this type of clause is drafted. And what you'll see here is that what it's told me is here's the calculation of interest clause that we would typically use based on our gold standard. Now, what I don't want to do is just insert this clause into this contract and then inadvertently introduce a whole number of proofreading or review errors into the agreement. So I can come here, I can be nice to the agent if I want. Again, this isn't necessary. And I can say if I want to insert the calculation of interest clause, can you let me know if I will inadvertently introduce any undefined terms into the current agreement when I insert this clause. Now, again, this is something that we're able to do because within our draft and our proofreading product, we have the ability to detect all of the definitions in the document as well as to detect the undefined terms. So the agent isn't just taking a guess at this, it's using legally fine-tuned software to give you an accurate output. So once it gives me the answer, it's going to tell me if I were to introduce this clause, would there potentially be any undefined terms? And it's going to tell me here's a list of undefined terms that are not currently defined in the current agreement. Perfect. So I'm starting to get more and more information to give me context that I need to go ahead and insert this clause. The other thing, which is a big assumption, is let's say, for example, I'm a junior associate. I'm sitting in front of this 233-page contract. I know I want to insert this provision, but I actually don't know where on earth am I actually going to insert it. So what I can do is I can actually say, based on our precedent information, could you suggest for me where in the document I should place it? Again, use our firm's precedent in providing that. What's useful here is basically there's an element of learning and development starting to take place with respect to our proprietary data set. So some of the biggest concerns around these systems is how a lawyer is going to learn, how they're going to be able to improve, to move from trainee to associate to senior associate to ultimately partner. But again, instead of me having to wait till I get in front of the right person who can tell me where to place this clause, I can actually start to embed those learnings based on what sits within our best practice documents. Again, it's a human in the loop system. It's not just going to say, hey, insert it in clause 14. It's going to tell me where typically we tend to see these provisions so that I can review this information. And ultimately what I can do is make my own value judgment. And then the sort of final pinnacle here. So what I've managed to do is identify any gaps in the documents, any clauses that are currently not present that we would expect to see. I've found the gold standard provision. I've managed to dot my I's and cross my T's to make sure when I insert it, it's not going to inadvertently introduce any errors. And what I can now do is actually start the agent to start taking actions within my document itself. So I can say we are good to go. Let's go ahead and insert this clause, making sure to change the formatting to align with the contract currently being reviewed. Please also insert definitions for the undefined terms referenced earlier, placing them in correct alphabetical order. Again, the formatting that we're asking it to do, the placing in correct alphabetical order, are things that are only possible because the existing defining system is able to do these. And obviously, because I don't just want it to take actions in the document that I can't review, I can ask it to highlight everything in yellow so I can review as well. And basically, what the agent is going to do is now go and take all of these actions into my document on my behalf, using all of the information in the previous pass that I've asked it to do. Now, this is actually going to fail. As with everyone in this space, we are iterating super quickly. The ability to take actions in the document is coming out at the end of this month, but we want to get ahead of it and really show you what the pinnacle of this agentic system looks like once you're able to take those actions within your document. The last point just to note is we also have third-party integrations. So if you want to quickly check that all of the party names and the registered address and company numbers match with company's house, it's very easy just to automatically pull that from company's house within this agentic system. So hopefully that gives you a flavor around sort of the agentic system and how it works. Wanted to keep this fairly targeted and specific. So happy to kind of hear any questions or any sort of general thoughts around what you think.
Thanks a lot, Rhys. Yeah, you've really sort of innovated the project there, the product. Interesting. So, in terms of the the plan to roll out agents, which you were referring to, I mean, where is this heading now?
Yeah, so I think the first one is, I mean, we're already deploying obviously to some existing customers. The second one is we're focusing on building out further solutions in the workflow. So we have Vault, Draft, and Proof, but ultimately the success of an agentic system is based on how much of the workflow you own. So we have a new product, you can see it referenced there, Ripples. We're still playing with the name, which is going to be a novel product in this space, and it's going to solve for an additional workflow that isn't currently solved for in the market. So the more workflows we can solve for a lawyer, ultimately the better we can deploy an agent to successfully complete those workflows on a lawyer's behalf.
Gotcha. And in terms of the people who perhaps have already got to Finally, or people who are looking at this, perhaps they've seen earlier demos, how does this change, to put it very simply, how much they're going to pay and how they pay? Do they get everything? Are all the new features part of the same old price? Or are these two separate things, the old Definely, as it were, and the new Definely?
Yeah, so I mean, there's sort of two approaches. So obviously, with existing customers, one of the benefits is there's an existing user base for us to deploy the software to, right? So you don't have the traditional change management and headaches there. Enhance in and of itself includes all the underlying products. So if you were to come and buy Enhance, you would need to get access to the Vault, Draft, and Proof products. It's just one price, everything thrown in. It's not like I need to chop and change. And some vendors, you get so confused about all of the support things you need to buy to get it to work. It's just one price and everything. For some users, though, who are like, we don't just want to jump right into the deep end, we can do a crawl, walk around approach where we can start with a draft and Vault and then add the agentic system on afterwards. But the agentic system and the enhanced product includes all of those underlying products as well, for
Fantastic.
an additional cost, of course.
No, thank you. That's good to clarify that. And just last question, really, which is about integrations. Obviously, Definely as a tool that very much is based around bringing in content from within a law firm or in-house legal team. How does it connect to all of these other systems, and what systems can it connect to?
Correct. So NetDocuments, iManage, and SharePoint are all supported. With iManage and NetDocuments, we inherit all your permission sets. So if someone couldn't access a document in the DMS, they're not going to be able to circumvent and access that document through our search functionality. All of the metadata, so your search filters are pulled into the system itself. And also some firms we work with actually have a hybrid where they might have some content in SharePoint because they potentially have Copilot as well as some content in iManage, and we can point into both simultaneously. So yeah, we support all three.
Fantastic. Well, that's all we've got time for today. But if you're watching this and you would like to know more, please reach out to Riss and the team at Definely. They'd be very happy to tell you more. But let's leave it there. Thanks, Riss.
Awesome. Always a pleasure. Thanks, Richard.